This is Entrepreneurs Get Visible, the podcast for people who want more impact, influence, and income. I'm Anna Parker-Naples, and I'll be sharing with you proven methods from leading entrepreneurs that help you get visible as an authority in your field. Because anything's possible when you get visible. In today's episode of Entrepreneurs Get Visible, we are talking about how to decide what format for your podcast is right for you and your listener. Now, before we dive into this, if you're listening to this show, it's because you have an interest in getting visible and increasing your connections so that people know about you as the go-to expert. So I'd like to tell you about my podcast guesting mastery masterclass that I'm running for free, which you can find out about at annapn.co/podcast guest with a capital P and a capital G. That link will be beneath wherever you're listening to this episode today in the show notes. We're going to be covering all sorts of things you need to know to start to strategize and monetize appearing on other people's podcasts. Because right now is the time to get in front of leveraging other people's audiences so that you can bring people into your funnels so you can nurture them. And you can do that by getting on their shows and guesting in the right way, making it strategic and not just aimless, which makes a massive difference to the results that you get financially. So we're talking today then about how you know what format to go for. Before you make this decision, you've got to know really three things. What is the purpose of your podcast for you personally? What is it you personally want to get out of it in terms of achievement and recognition? What is it you personally want to get out of your podcast in terms of your business? Is it for leads? Is it again for that visibility piece? Is it for connections? And then finally, what is it that you want your listeners to get out of listening to your podcast? Because when you know that, you can start to make decisions about the format of your show based on who is listening and on what you want for your business. So it might be that if you are looking to host a show because you want to develop your connections and increase your level of visibility and authority, then it might be that having interviews with other people in your industry, people with more influence and bigger audiences, is going to be a format that makes sense for you. If you are doing your podcast because you want to position your own authority and share your own views, then going solo is probably the way for you. If you are in that stage where you know that you have expertise, but you're not quite ready to say that you are the expert, then potentially doing a show where you are interviewing other people who are more experienced than you, and you are then going to share their value by being the host, then that might be a great way to position you as well. So you've got to think, how confident are you to deliver material on your own? Because there is a responsibility when you are the host on your own to make sure that you have enough content, that you are confident enough in what you say, and that you can deliver it concisely. The other thing you've got to think about is who is listening. Because when you think about who is listening, that individual that you want to listen to your material, to be moved, inspired, educated, or entertained by your material, I want you to think, instead of a kind of wash of a demographic, that you start to think about your listeners as individuals who have timetables, responsibilities, family lives. And when you understand a little bit more about them and their current situation, you're going to have a much stronger idea of how many or how few pockets of time they might potentially have. Are they, for instance, driving somewhere on a long commute? That might impact how long your content is. Are they, for example, a mum who has children and has very little time for herself? In which case, would you deliver material that is fast and to the point? Or would you make your podcast content something that is much longer, make the format much longer, so it might be something she listens to as she irons, if she's the one who does the ironing in her household. Personally, in my household, that doesn't really happen unless we've completely run out of clothes. But you've got to think about who it is you're targeting. Because when you know that, it's going to be much easier for you then to make those decisions as to what the format's going to be. The other thing you can consider is, are you going to have a podcast format where you're actually doing an activity? Maybe you're outside, maybe there's something that's being demonstrated. This might work quite well, for example, with a sporting podcast or a podcast that is about food. Is there something that's happening in the show that you could be describing? And again, that format has some level of responsibility for you, because not only are you potentially interviewing, but you are having to communicate what's happening visually and in terms of smell, maybe even if you are doing something about food. So another option to consider is, are you going to have effectively a round table discussion with maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 people who are involved in a discussion? Now, that does take a degree of skill in making sure that everybody's voice is heard. But what is right for your audience is going to be individual. It's got to be right for your audience. It's got to be right for positioning you and your business. So this is not a one-size-fits-all. You've got to go to the drawing board to work out exactly what you're trying to achieve through your podcast. And it isn't the case with podcasts that the format has to be a particular length. It isn't the case that you have to commit to every single week or every single day. You can pick and choose. All I would say about the frequency of your delivery is that I would be consistent. Whatever it is you choose, be consistent. Let people know right from the start of your show what to expect from you. And if for whatever reason you want to deviate from that, say you want to increase your frequency of episodes or you want to decrease them, but maybe you've got some family issues or there's other things in your work that are going to take priority, then I would say that it absolutely matters that whatever changes you're making, you bring your listeners along the journey with you, so you communicate that those changes are happening. So think about this. In your lifestyle, how much time are you going to be able to dedicate to getting content out there? In my business, I make it absolutely primary that I'm delivering 2 episodes a week, 1 with guests and 1 solo, because this is the core of my business. This is how I know that I'm driving people to my business. This takes priority for me over my social media content. I know, therefore, that I have to schedule in my diary every week that I know what's going out, that I have a recording schedule once a month, and things are batch recorded. So you've got to be honest with yourself about how much time and commitment you can give to getting the quality content out there. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you want to have more than 1 show a week, how much time does it take you personally to edit, to do the show notes, to upload to your hosting site? And then the promotion on the other side of it. Can you have a team on board? If you have a team on board, of course, there is a cost implication, but you're going to be able to get more content out there with less of your time. So when you're thinking about starting a podcast, you've got to bear all of these things in mind. It's not just a question of rocking up to the microphone and hitting record. Think about who you're creating your show for, what demands do they have on their time, how much of the content do you want them to be able to consume on a regular basis, and how committed are you to up-leveling in terms of the people you connect with. How often can you actually commit to getting a quality podcast out there? So I just want to recap then that you can make all sorts of decisions about your podcast, but you're not married to them. You can make changes to the frequency, to the length of your show, to the style of your show, to the format of your show whenever you choose. But do think it through before you get started so that your audience know what to expect from you. And just to wrap up, just want to remind you again that I am hosting a podcast guesting mastery masterclass for free that you can find out all about in the show notes at annapn.co/podcast guest.
Thank you for listening to Entrepreneurs Get Visible. To get your free checklist on how to raise your profile and to find out about our community, go to annaparkernaples.co.uk/get visible.